Love is a burning thing, and it makes a fiery ring. Bound by wild desire, I fell into a ring of fire. I fell into a burning ring of fire. I went down, 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 and the flames went higher, and it burns, 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 the ring of fire, the ring of fire. I fell into a burning ring of fire. I went down, 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 and the flames went higher, and it burns, 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 the ring of fire, the ring of fire. The taste of love is sweet when hearts like ours meet. I fell for you like a child. Oh, but the fire went wild. I fell into a burning ring of fire. I went down, 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 and the flames went higher, and it burns, 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 the ring of fire, the ring of fire. I fell into a burning ring of fire. I went down, 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 and the flames went higher, and it burns, 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 the ring of fire, the ring of fire, the ring of fire, the ring of fire. May 14th, 2019 at 12:45 Eastern Standard Time, USA. You've joined Mitch Miller's podcast, The Black Hole. I've noticed that many other podcasts have very polished intros, nice polished intro with fancy music. I can't offer you that. All I have is a voice recorder and me singing a little Cash there, because I go down, down, down into the black hole, 900 feet underground. Just finished my first Monday shift. We were supposed to build more crib, the same area where I was building crib before, but in the mine you have to move equipment to get to supplies, and in this case there was the supply was blocked by a shuttle car. So we helped with the outbuy crew and didn't get to building any crib, but we did move what we needed out of the way. However, the scoop, which is a utility vehicle of the mine, doesn't run on rails. It's called a scoop. It's got a little scoop on the front you load stuff on, and thing that pushes it off. Runs on batteries. Both scoops were dead, so they needed charged. So we weren't able to get our Lincoln log cribs to build cribs tonight. I did get to drive one of the trolley cars for the first time. Hopped on and drove that because we had to help the motormen. See, there's long supply trains down there that are about, well, not super long. They're about 10 or 15 cars long. We had to take those into some spurs, off of the main rail. And then you have to move the rail trolley cars, the man trips that run on rails, get them out of the way, move the train up, get it on a spur, move the man trips back around. That's a lot of flipping switches and getting things off into spurs to switch and swap things out. I did see a mole tonight. A tiny little mole or field mouse was running along the corridor, following my light as I walked back towards the dinner hole. That was interesting. May 15th, 2019. It is 12:28 Eastern Standard Time, USA. 12:28 a.m. or 0:28. Just got off second shift of this week, and we were sent back to build the same cribs that we weren't able to build yesterday. So yesterday, the utility vehicle of the mine, the scoop, it has a dump truck like bed on the front that's a scoop, and it's a vehicle that is has a joint in the center of it, so all four sets of wheels can turn, and the center of the vehicle pivots on like one pinion. The scoop's on one end and a bunch of battery packs are on the other end, and it sits real low with a little cab they call a kitchen. So the dump truck like scoop bed has a battering ram that can push stuff off of it when needed. Yesterday, both scoops were pretty much dead, and there was another vehicle that was in our way. Now there's six entries running along the main, or 8 entries with cross cuts, but as the mining progresses, the belt is in the middle and it gets closed off for ventilation. Ventilation is very important in the mines. So we have to go around the belt, because they extend the belt out close to where the working face is, so that the shuttle cars that transport the coal from the miner can get right to the belt as quickly as possible. We had to go out around the belt. All the cribbing is on the opposite side of the belt line than where we need to build the cribbing. There was a mistake made, and they undercut a cross cut, and it needs to be filled in with wood cribbing. So when we got on site today, after our 45-minute rail car ride in, they had moved a buggy into the way again. So we had to move that. Then the scoop was actually on the charger, so we got the scoop off the charger, which I learned how to do today. And we eventually made our way with the scoop all the way over to the cribbing, got a load of the cribbing, made our way. There was a miner in the way, so we had to go around it up the railroad tracks, because we were at the end of the railroad tracks where the working face is. We had to go up the railroad tracks, in through that way, and what I would have done is dumped the cribbing where we were working. But the black hat I was with wanted to pick each Lincoln log like cribbing piece out of the bucket, the scoop, one by one. While we had that throughway open where we were able to get over and get back, I would have dumped one load of cribbing, went over, got another load of cribbing, brought it over and dumped it, and maybe even went over and got a third load of cribbing, then put the scoop on the charger and built the cribs. That's not what we did. We built about 3 cribs, and we got stuck behind a bunch of mining equipment, couldn't get back over the cribbing for the last 2 hours of our shift. So we helped out with some other little items, supplying the miner. I got to see the front of the miner head, and that's about it. May 16th, 2019 at 12:19 Eastern Standard Time AM. You're listening to Mitch Miller's podcast, The Black Hole, and I've just come out of a coal mine after a afternoon shift, and tonight we did a couple interesting things. We had to drag an emulsion line. It's about a 4-inch thick black plastic tubing that has couplers every so many feet. It was about 300 feet or 100 yards, the length of a football field. We used one of the man trip carts, the electric motorized carts that run on the rails. They run on either battery or on the overhead trolley wire with a trolley pull attached to them. So we notched out this pipe and put rope through it, tied it off onto the man trip, and we had to drag it out of one spur onto the main line, then drag it down and around into another spur where they're running the tubing back to the working face, getting ready for the long wall. And we tied it on, but the couplers kept catching where the spurs ran off to the side. They would catch in the crook of the rail, ripping the rope, snapping the rope multiple times. We got it out into the main line, and then we reversed the man trip and headed back the other way. And this time we notched it out and put a chain through it. But the chain ripped through because it caught again. So eventually we got it through these double doors into the side spur where it needed to go. But we had to go back 60 blocks of coal, or approximately 6,000 feet. I was walking it to make sure that the couplings didn't catch on anything, but the fire boss, which is the guy that comes along and checks for fire hazards before each shift, he came up behind and told me to get in the man trip, that I shouldn't have to walk the whole time. I was going to walk it. Anyway, we got the piping, the tubing, all the way back where it needed to go. Then we had to hand rock dust an area belt line 1 block long, which consists of just ripping open bags of limestone dust, which is like baking flour, and grabbing it in handfuls and throwing it against the wall in the ceiling and dumping some out on the floor. After we did this, we had to drag the main belt line out of 5 South, which is the main line running south. The mine itself is like a giant U. You go north, out of the portal you go north, then you cut west for about 100 blocks, then you cut south for 100 blocks, and there's an active working face at that southern end. There are 2 spurs that go off to the west, off of the 5 South line, and those are the long wall, which I'll get into in a later podcast or later segment, and another working face where they're setting up the long wall. Those are spurs that cut off to the west and have active working faces. Anyway, I found out tonight that the mine is not running at full production tomorrow, Thursday, Friday, and probably Saturday. So I have Thursday and Friday off for sure. I'm not sure about Saturday. I got to call in. But I'm going to continue doing my podcast, but that's the deal.
May 16th, 2019 at 23:23 Eastern Standard Time, USA, or 11:23 p.m. Didn't have to work tonight, but I wanted to take this time to talk about what I did on last Saturday shift. I did have to work a shift last Saturday, and I was on the belt crew putting together a conveyor belt. So there's miles and miles and miles of conveyor belt in the mine. As I said, it's a U-shaped mine, and the working faces, well, there's working faces and longwall. There's two types of mining primarily done nowadays. One is done with a continuous miner, which is a machine with a big wheel on the front with bits that grind up the coal and shoot it out a conveyor belt on the back where it piles up, and then another machine scoops up that coal pile and loads it onto shuttle cars to be taken to the main conveyor belt. Then there's longwall, which is where entries are cut about 1,000 or 1,400 feet apart from each other, all the way back about 100 blocks of coal back. Then in between those entries, there might be 3 or 4 entries on one side, 3 or 4 entries on the other, all that run back 100 blocks. In between those entries, at the end, there's a connector that's cut, and then there are metal shields or chocks, they're called, that are lined up along the corridor between the two entries, and a big plow-like thing with wheels, with grinder wheels on either end, is attached to a cable, and it runs back and forth for 1,400 feet, grinding up coal, and the shields move up. They keep the roof up while the grinder is grinding coal and runs out a conveyor belt. That's the long wall. Then the shields move up one at a time automatically to progress, and then what's behind the shields collapses and caves in as a gob. Anyway, we were up at the section where there was there's continuous mining going on, and we were at a section where the roof was about 19 to 25 feet high. It was a cross cut, and the conveyor belt had to go across this. Well, up where we're at, the conveyor belt is hung by chains from the roof bolts, but where it crossed this cross cut, we had to put feet down and connect the conveyor belt. So we made our connection, then we had to pull the conveyor belt using a scoop attached to a rope, pull the conveyor belt tight, which was a tricky situation to say the least. And this was extending the conveyor belt up towards the working section so that more coal can be mined and taken by shuttle cars and loaded on the conveyor belts. And the reason the roof was so high was where another longwall section is going to connect in the next longwall section. So after one longwall section is completely mined out, they move all the shields all the way back to another section of coal 100 blocks back in and do it all over again. It's very profitable. It's where most of the profit of the mine comes from, is the longwall. It is May 17th, 2019 at 21:14 Eastern Standard Time, USA. This is Mitch Miller, and you're listening to my podcast, The Black Hole. I had the night off from coal mining tonight, but I wanted to take the opportunity to talk a little bit about some of the things I learned in my 80-hour mine safety class that's required before you can work underground by the state of West Virginia. Whenever you grind up coal on a working face, when you take a big wheel and start chunking and grinding up coal, methane gas is released from the face. And you have a methane checker that you have to check every 20 minutes near the face to make sure that it's not too gassy, but that's why ventilation in the coal mine is so important. There's big exhaust fans and blower fans that blow air into the mine at all times, and then you have curtains that direct the air up towards the face, or a tube and a fan that directs ventilation up towards the face to be take all that methane gas out and away. So when you test for methane and you get a reading of 1%, you have to shut down your equipment and change the ventilation. If you have a reading of 1.5%, you have to shut down and evacuate the whole section, the whole working section. Now, methane is an explosive gas in higher concentrations. I believe 5 to 15% methane is explosive range. Also, you have to carry on your person a self-rescuer. This is a little package that comes apart and has a breathing apparatus. It buys you about 10 minutes worth of fresh air to get to a different self-rescuer, which uses chemicals. There are many different self-rescuers, but there's the 10-minute ones that weigh about 8 pounds that you have to carry on your belt at all times. They have to be within hand's reach at all times. And then there are different types that use chemicals to take the oxygen out of the air you're breathing out and recycle it to last an hour, to give you oxygen for an hour. So the 10-minute one is designed to get you to a cache of self-rescuers that'll last an hour, and those ones can get you out of the mine. Buying an hour of time gets you at least to an escape area that can get you out of the mine. So those are some of the basics of the coal mine that I learned in that course. And as per the format I'm beginning to develop, I want to talk a little bit about, should a man or woman for that matter, any person, need to go 900 feet underground to get away from radio waves? Is that my only reason for coal mining? No, but I look at it as therapeutic for my brain to be out of that heavy field of radio waves that I experience within the city limits of Pittsburgh. So I think, so we live in a world where everyone's addicted to wireless technology, and everybody wants the next big thing, which is 5G. I watch a lot of C-SPAN, or I used to watch a lot of C-SPAN when I had the time, and I saw the CEO of one of the major mobile carriers speaking in a forum, and he explained what 5G is, and that's basically where smaller radio transmitters are going to be in the tens of thousands in a major city, on every building, on probably on street lights and things of that nature, to deliver a network that can tell you where your mobile device is within centimeters. That's how closely it can track your mobile device. So that being said, you're going to build this network, and I've done some investigations into the malfeasance of corporations, a couple different investigations. one of which is I looked into the FCC databases of radio antennas, the Federal Communications Commission, and on their database for antennas, they're missing a significant amount of antennas that I can visually verify here in the city of Pittsburgh. They're just not even on the database. So the FCC doesn't even know where these huge 200-foot antennas are that we can see with our naked eye. My question is, when, so let's say Russia or anyone for that matter hacks our mobile communications network and turns up the radio frequency to a point that makes people's ears bleed, do we have a plan to cut the power to all these radio transmitters or to tear them down? I mean, if the FCC doesn't even have accurate data on where these things are located, and you're going to build a 5G network with ones on every building, tens of thousands to keep track of, I'd like to know that there's a ironclad plan as to how to cut the power to all of these devices before we go ahead with the 5G network. Now, you know, it's scary to talk about ears bleeding, but what if tinnitus in old people is simply radio exposure? Or what if shaking in an elderly person is because of 80 years worth of radio exposure? Has anybody stopped to think about that? Anyway, I think I know that we can't stop what's called progress, and these mobile companies get away with it because they're considered infrastructure. I don't consider them infrastructure. I believe we have the internet, it's wired, it's grounded, and if a power outage happens or a natural disaster occurs, we can access the internet and download a website that will explain our next 7 days worth of directions as to how we're supposed to proceed. Or we can go to the website of the federal government, a powerful website that can take thousands of users or millions of users at one time, and copy and paste it into a Word file and shut our computer down to save on our battery. We can reopen that file and look at our daily instructions as to what we're supposed to do in this time of emergency. So you don't need radio broadcasting instructions at all times. You don't need television wireless waves telling you through the TV what to do. All you need is a wired internet. So I think a much better way to build the 5G network is if you took every permit for these little radio transmitters and you gave it and you used the fee from that to subsidize one residential home so that it can both transmit and receive electrical power. Because if you want to build a smart power grid, the way to do it is by incorporating batteries into all the residential properties. And I think if every residential property had batteries that could store energy, store solar when it's cheap during the day, you could create a commodities market, kind of like day trading, where people can sit at work and buy energy and store it at their house. Say they want to use cheap energy during the day from solar, but they want to charge their batteries with coal power at night. And then they can sell that energy to their neighbors during the day, kind of like a mini commodities market. Instead of cap and trade, I think an internet commodities market based off of battery technology is much smarter and much better. And it'll get those batteries down cheaper to where more electric vehicles are available at a cheaper price. So if the government subsidized this program, I think it'd be much smarter rather than building a 5G network just so that I can look up my sports scores quicker on my cell phone. So that being said, those are just some of my ideas as to what the more logical thing would be to do with all this technology. And if you would like to find out more about me, the artist, the most underground artist in the world, go to www.plotm.com. That's plotm as in Mitch.com.